Today I want to tell you about a city of American history, a copper city of American history, located in the heart of the Mohawk Valley. Of course, I'm talking about Rome. No, not the one over in Europe, Rome, New York, the one I was born in. There's a lot of history in this small nook of the world, and I thought it'd be a good place to start out this series on local New York history. So I hope you join me as we go back to the very beginning. Currently, Rome has a population of around 33,000. And did you know that it's the second largest city in New York State? Of course, that's by area. But nevertheless, Rome is very important, not only to the state, but to the nation. And I want to go over a brief history of it. And to do that, I want to go all the way back to the very beginning. Before it was a city, before it was even a town. Back to when it was a portage path for the Oneida people and beyond. You see, this was the land of the Iroquois, or the Haudenosaunee, and there was an important canoe portage in this area that had a few different names: the Great Carrying Place, the Oneida Carrying Place, or the Deowainsta. And due to its location at the head of the Mohawk River, this area was basically a link between the Atlantic Ocean and the Great Lakes. So when the British came to town, of course it wasn't a town, but when they came to the continent and they were fighting with the French, they knew the strategic importance of this little area. And so they started building fortifications. People started living next to those fortifications, but they were no good. And it wasn't until 1758 that the British got serious and sent a large force to the portage and secured the area and built a new military complex, and they called it Fort Stanwix. After the French and Indian War, it was rebuilt when the next war came along, the War for Independence, and it was tested in August of 1777 when a large British force laid siege on the fort under the command of British General Barry St. Leger. But thanks to the leadership of Peter Gansevoort, the Americans successfully repelled this force, and it is important. All right, it's the fort that never surrendered. And why is that important? Because this failed siege for the British, combined with the battle at nearby Oriskany, as well as the battles of Bennington and Saratoga, was basically a turning point in the War for Independence. It convinced the French to join in on the American colonies' side. So after that war, the fort was just hanging out. In 1784, it was the site where there was a famous treaty between the Iroquois and U.S. to discuss a border between them. And at this point, the area itself was just known as Fort Stanwix. People weren't calling it Rome. That wasn't until about a decade after that, in 1796, when the township was formed. Yeah, that's right, the town of Rome, not city yet. And there's different theories as to why Rome was called Rome. One of them is that it was a time when upstate New York communities were being named after classical European cities, so like Syracuse. And let's fast forward to 1817, when the first shovel of dirt for the famous Erie Canal project was dug by none other than Governor DeWitt Clinton, the quote-unquote father of the Erie Canal. The canal is a big deal. It effectively connected New York City to the Great Lakes, and everything in between was affected, including New York City itself. There was such prosperity with this transportation route that it sort of sparked a golden age for Rome and the country. You see, both were growing at the same time, and you have classic things popping up in Rome around this time. St. Peter's Church, the courthouse. There was an innovative cheese factory. The Industrial Revolution was in full swing, and the population was swelling as waves of immigrants were arriving because of all the opportunity present. Rome, it was done being a town. It was time to become a city, and that happened in 1870. There was already Rome Free Academy, which started up the year before. You have a fire and police department and the first elected mayor. There was a lot of firsts during this time. The first railroad in Rome, the first telephone, there was a small cottage hospital that eventually becomes Rome Memorial. And in 1885, an important engineer with the name of John B. Jervis, he died. And what does he do? He leaves behind his house to be used as a public library. And you can still check out books there to this day. Also around this time, you got Francis Bellamy in 1892, who writes the Pledge of Allegiance. This was part of a campaign to promote nationalism in the United States. Industry was still booming during this time. I mean, we're right in the heart of the Gilded Age. And Rome makes a name for itself when it comes to copper. And that's how it gets the nickname of Copper City. Around this time, it was producing like 10% of all copper in the entire country. Let's jump ahead. And by the way, I'm glossing over a bunch of stuff, but in the 1930s, a new movie palace was opened, the Capitol Theater. Then World War II happened. The U.S. War Department was looking for a spot in central New York to put an air depot. They decided on Rome, and thus the Griffiss Air Force Base was born. And Griffiss is half of the reason why I exist in the first place. Another important thing about the Griffiss Air Force Base is that it played a crucial role in the Cold War. After the Cold War was over, it closed in 1995, but its legacy does live on through the Griffiss Business and Technology Park, which was established on the site. And it was ready to go for 1999 when Woodstock came to town. Of course, it was a music festival that attracted thousands of music fans from all over the country, but was plagued with problems and criticized as a failure. But, it is what it is. Rome really redeemed itself, if it even needed to, a few years later in 2001. Not just any day in 2001, September 11th. You see, at the time, what was known as the Northeast Air Defense Sector, or NEADS, was based in Rome, and it played a crucial role on that day. Among other things, it was tasked with searching for the missing planes and scrambling fighter jets in response to the attacks. So as you can see, from the Revolutionary War to the Cold War to 9/11, Rome has played a significant role in American history. If you're interested in learning more, there's all kinds of exhibits and tours. You got the Erie Canal Village. Fort Stanwix is a national monument, and you can check out the Rome Historical Society as well. I want to point out that I haven't even mentioned Delta Lake, and that's on purpose. I'm saving it for the next video where we look at what lies beneath. So I hope you join me, and let's wrap things up with a nice historical montage. Have a good one.